Hello everyone, and welcome back. Once again, it is story time. And the story I have for you today might have some unexpected consequences. For you, I already know what I got myself into. But you should be just fine. So just lay back, turn off the lights, turn the volume up, and enjoy. Most scary stories can be so cliche. There's a house, there's a monster, there's a twist. The list goes on and on. Originality is a rare commodity, but that is no one's fault. With so many people in this world, it makes sense that being original is getting harder and harder. But some of these stories get retold not so much to be entertaining, but instead to be a warning for anyone listening. This will serve as one of those stories, because I do not know how much time is left before I am gone, and everyone else is dead. And I don't want this to happen again. It was summer break, and my friends and I were trying to think of what we could do. But we didn't exactly have the money for a summer trip, so we'd have to settle on exploring areas that are more accessible to us. But other than the cemetery, there really wasn't anything in this small town. Lots of people think that small towns have such a rich history, but it was pretty dull around here, and nothing ever really happened. It's not the most ideal spot for a bunch of curious kids who just want to find something to do. We've been to the cemetery quite a few times. We usually go after dark, hoping that we will see something. But aside from the graffiti and the occasional wildlife, nothing ever happened. And this night started like any other. We opened the gate and walked up the dirt path leading to the different rows of headstones that lined the hilltop. It was a small cemetery. Not many people were buried here, since most people, when they got old enough, just left town. We had one mausoleum, which was ancient. Cracks riddled the outside and vines coiled around the pillars. I often tried to picture what it looked like when it was brand new, but I'm not the most creative or imaginative person. And what made it worse is that this was the best landscape for street artists from the neighboring town to practice on. And each week we are greeted with new artwork. Sometimes it's really good and creative, but most of the times it's just signatures and tags from kids trying to leave their mark where no one will see it, so they won't get in trouble. Today, there was a colorful cartoon owl that made up a big part of the wall, but it was sadly surrounded by the usual array of initials and words we've become accustomed to. But there was some dark lettering in the bottom right corner that took a while to notice. And once we looked a little closer, it was actual writing. It was a poem. There was a crooked man who walked a crooked mile, and he found a crooked sixpence against a crooked stile. He bought a crooked cat who caught a crooked mouse, and they all lived together in a crooked little house. But the crooked man was sad, and once he had a thought. Why should he be crooked when others, they were not? Everything was worthless. He heaved a great big sigh, and he went and found a rope and tied it to the sky. Upon a chair he stood. His eyes were blank and dead. Without another thought, he went and hung his head. Now the story's not yet over, for this tale is mythed and old, Go hide under the cover. There's something not yet told. There once was a crooked man who had a crooked smile. And if you've lived his life, he'll send you through a trial. He lives for your torment, makes it full of strife, and he won't be content until you take your life. Now, after reading this, I want to say that it was raining and a huge crash of thunder could be heard as a foul omen of what was yet to come. But I can't. It was a nice clear night and everything was fine. Then I looked up, and I swear the owl's head wasn't tilted the first time I had seen it. But I chalked that up to it getting late and being dark. We hung out at the cemetery for maybe another hour before finally deciding we'd wasted enough time of the night and headed home. As we neared the exit, a man had just entered, wearing a nice suit and tie with a fancy hat. He seemed really out of place, but we figured there had been a recent funeral and he was just paying his respects. But as we got closer, things started to stand out. His knees were bent inward as if they were broken, and his arms hung to his sides with one of his shoulders seemingly dislocated. He stood very tall, but his torso seemed to twitch and jerk forward with each step. Every movement seemed unnatural. As he got closer, we saw that his suit was tarnished and stained, and his hat was pulled down so low that we couldn't make out his eyes. What we did see, however, was that long smile that stretched from ear to ear, showing his broken, yellow teeth. We had no idea what to do. No one said a word. We were frozen in terror, unable to utter a single sound. All we could do was watch as this thing lurched forward, slowly closing the gap between us. Finally, one of my friends pulled away and started running. This seemed to break the standstill for all of us, as we turned and ran. We dodged between the different headstones and to the far end of the cemetery. We wheeled around when we reached the wall surrounding the perimeter, and we saw that he was gone, with no trace at all. It was a very open area, and we could see clear through to the exit. But the fact that we couldn't see anything was not reassuring. It made everything worse. Panic was building in all of us, and we looked at each other, not knowing exactly what to do. Almost in unison, we started taking short, deliberate steps back towards the entrance, scanning around us, making sure it was safe. Though the area is dimly lit, with only a few overhead lights and the stars, our vision had adjusted and we could see pretty well. But in a panic state, you start to see things. And the shadows that moved around us were not making things any easier. We continued to walk slowly, taking our time to assess the area between each step. Nothing had changed. We were alone. Or we thought we were. After we had gotten back to where we had first seen him, we started hearing slow, off-tune whistling coming from behind us. We all stopped. The entrance was right there, but none of us could move. Again, we were frozen. As the whistling grew louder, we slowly started to turn our heads to see him stumbling towards us. That smile shining through the darkness, filling us with nothing but dread. But then, just as soon as he had appeared, he just vanished right in front of us and just faded away into the shadows. We just stood there, catching our breath. Then we slowly turned around to head back towards the entrance. We admittedly walked a bit faster this time, paying no mind to look around because we just wanted to leave. As we walked down the dirt path back to the gate, each step was tense and cautious. But we made it to the gate eventually. I let out a huge sigh and looked to my friends. But no one was there. I quickly swung around and looked up the path. And strewn about that last little stretch were spots of blood and various body parts seemingly ripped from their host. I couldn't see my actual friends anywhere. I was only able to see what was left. And then that whistling started again. And out of the darkness, on top of that hill, I saw him, smiling. His suit now more stained than before, with what I would assume is the blood of my friends. A tear started to roll down my cheek, and a knot built up in my throat as I silenced a yell. He wasn't moving. He just stood there, smiling. I slowly backed up and eventually gathered enough strength to run. Surprisingly, he never followed, and I was able to make it home. I swear this happened, but no one in town believes me. No one remembers me ever even having a group of friends. And their parents don't even remember them. I've tried time and time again to remember their names, but nothing comes back to me. It's as if they never truly existed. I can't tell if that was because of that monster, or if I'm just going insane. At this point, I'd believe any option you gave me. But I think he's coming back. That smile is carved into my mind. And I heard that whistling again. That's why I wanted to write this down. So that, hopefully, something can get out there. But if I am forgotten, and this note will probably disappear as well. If this somehow survives, I want it to be a warning. Don't read any poems you randomly find. Don't mention the crooked man. Don't bring him up in conversation. Wipe that name entirely from your mind. Or, if you don't believe me, you could always recite his poem. And for your sake, if you do, I hope I'm just crazy. The legend of the Crooked Man has been around for centuries, and the nursery rhyme has gone through several changes after its original conception. In fact, the original rhyme only consisted of 4 lines. There once was a crooked man, and he walked a crooked mile. He found a crooked sixpence against a crooked stile. He bought a crooked cat, which caught a crooked mouse, and they all lived together in a little crooked house. This poem is believed to be about Scottish General Alexander Leslie, who signed a covenant with the Parliaments of England securing religious rights and political freedom for Scotland. The crooked stile in the nursery rhyme is believed to be the alliance between Parliament and Scotland, or the border between them, depending on who you ask. The crooked house refers to the fact that even though they had come to an agreement, the animosity between them continued to grow. And the crooked sixpence is believed to be attributed to the recoinage around 1696, which led to the sixpence being made of very thin silver, making them easy to bend, making them crooked. The earliest reports of this rhyme are all from the 17th century, and while the theory about Alexander Leslie is the most popular, there was an origin that is more innocent, being inspired by the multicolored, half-timbered houses that leaned at irregular angles in the wool merchants' village of Lavenham. But we know this is not the final version of the rhyme, and that more sinister verses were added over time. It is important to note that Alexander Leslie did not kill himself. In fact, he died at the age of 81 from an unknown illness in his home. But when there are political practices being questioned by the general population, some things can end up a bit crooked, if you will. The later added verses to the Crooked Man say that during the time after the deal was made, Alexander was gripped with guilt and hung himself in his own home, and riddled by all of the negative emotions he felt right before he died, he became a vengeful spirit, and is sometimes referred to as a tulpa, a spirit that is said to go after those who are in despair. It's worth noting that a tulpa is a thought form, a being given shape when it's talked about and brought into existence by belief. And there are many forms of tulpas throughout the world in many different cultures. At this point, the legend told that he haunted the house he died in, and will bring harm to anyone who dares come inside. It was also said that he harbored hatred for certain individuals and family members that were similar to him, but still happy. He would then attempt to drive them to commit suicide, or he would kill them himself. Even after all of this, the legend still grows. When a writer in the 1800s was researching different legends and folklore, they found common verses in dozens of different cultures referring to the Crooked Man. And the entity that was depicted in these verses was an unstoppable force, bringing death to any and all who summon it. And the way you summoned it was by reciting a specific incantation. These different legends were then passed down through the ages, translated, transcribed, and researched, and eventually ended up as a harmless little nursery rhyme for children. And it was in this action that the Crooked Man was released upon the world. And by the time anyone realized what they had done, the Crooked Man was already here, and it was too late. All of these different origins get smashed together in various ways, depending on who you talk to or what legends you read. But no matter what you believe, or which version is your favorite, one thing is certain. Once you have summoned the Crooked Man, he cannot be stopped. You cannot run. You cannot hide. He's coming for you. There's no order, no rhyme, no reason. Wherever there is darkness, he will be there. Once you have summoned the Crooked Man, he will kill you. Eventually. No matter what. The way stories and legends evolve over time is fascinating. What once had a humble beginning can turn into something so tragic and sinister. The way time can distort information is insane. And some of these legends we are left with are truly terrifying. And with that, our time together comes to a close. I hope you enjoyed the story and the legend that inspired it. Please tell me what you thought in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like if you did enjoy this tale. Also, don't forget to subscribe and ring that dead bell so you know when the next audio log is out. And until then, wherever each and every one of you are, stay safe and stay curious.